There we go. I am now recording. Hello. Welcome back. Last off, we left off. We got introduced to Jiansu and what's his other name? Jiansu and Kelsang. And they were looking for the next avatar, and then they found Kyoshi. But I guess right now Kyoshi's a servant girl, and they have a fake avatar. Right now, and Kyoshi's like a servant right now. Hold on, just 1 second. There we go. Fake news. Yeah. And yeah, she's a servant to the Avatar right now. She gets teased a lot, and she has a cool friend named Rangi who's a fire nation. So that's pretty cool. Alright, so next we will leave off with, we will start with, this is gonna be just, I'm just gonna say chapter whatever, because I can't keep track of what chapter number this is. So I'm just gonna say chapter whatever. Alright, chapter whatever. The Boy from Makapu. Yoon couldn't hear what they were saying, but it was possible to read their body language. But it was possible to read their body language at this distance. Judging from the way she gestured wildly in the air, Rangi was ticked off at Kyoshi again. He smiled. The two of them were adorable together. He could have watched them all day, but alas, he rolled over onto his back and slid down the roof of the outer wall, using the edge of the gutter to arrest his fall. He let the impact turn his motion into a vault, front flipped into the air, and landed on the balls of his feet to the marble courtyard. Eye to eye with Hey Ran. Yeah, it's Hey Ran. Hey Ran. Yeah, Hey Ran. Yeah, Hey Ran. Eye to eye with Hey Ran. Impressive. No. Hold on, just 1 second. This book is a big book, so I need something to help me. There we go. Sorry for all the noise I'm making. Okay. Hold on. There we go. Alright. Eye to eye with Ray. Oh my god, I'm just totally. Hey Ram. Yeah, eye to eye with Hey Ram. Shoot. Impressive, the former headmistress of the Royal Fire Academy for Girls said, her arms crossed behind her back. When the spirits asked for a circus clown to intervene on their behalf, I'll know our time together was paid off. Yoon scrunched his face. His personal firebending tutor had a knacking for finding his moments of pride and then crushing them. I finished my hot squat sets early, he said. 500 reps. Perfect form, the whole way. And yet you chose to spend your spare time lounging on the roof, instead of moving on to your next exercise or meditating until I returned. No wonder you can't generate flame yet. You can train your body as much as you wish, but your mind remains weak. You notice Hayran never tore into him like this while her daughter was around. It was as if she didn't want to diminish the Avatar stature and Rangi's worshipful eyes. His image had to be carefully groomed and maintained, like the miniature trees that dotted the garden. The spirits forbid he appear human for a moment. Yoon dropped into the first. Yoon dropped into the fire fist stance. He paused for corrections, though it was unnecessary. Not even Heiran could fault his body placement, his spinal posture, his breath control. The only thing missing was the flame. She frowned at him, interpreting his perfection as an act of defiance, but gave him the signal to begin anyway. Here you, but still totally the Avatar. Totally the Avatar. Oh yeah, exactly. She frowned at him, interpreting his perfection as an act of defiance, but gave him the signal to begin anyway. As he punched out the air, she slowly walked around him in a circle. Fire Fist sessions were also opportunities for lectures. What you do when no one is guiding you determines who you are, Heiran said. The motto was probably engraved over a door somewhere in the Fire Academy. The results of your training are far less important than your attitude toward training. Yoon didn't think she truly believed that. Not for a second. She was simply picking on the parts of him that she couldn't examine and adjust for immediate improvement. If he couldn't firebend yet under her care, then his flaw resided deeper than in any of her previous students. His punches became crisper, to the point where the sleeves of his cotton training uniform snapped like a whip with each motion. He was a pair of images in a scroll, 2 points in time, repeating over and over again. Left fist, right fist. Your situation isn't unique, Heiran went on. History is full of avatars like you who try to coast on their talents. You're not the only one who wanted to take it easy. Yoon slipped. An event rare enough to notice. Hold on. There we go. An event rare enough. An event rare enough. An event rare enough to notice. His motion took him too far outside his center of gravity, and he stumbled to his knees. Sweat stung his eyes, ran into the corner of his mouth. Take it easy? Take it easy? Was she ignoring the fact that he spent sleepless nights poring over scholarly analyses of Yang Chen's political decisions? That he'd exhaustively memorized the names of every Earth Kingdom noble, Fire Nation commander, and Water Tribe chieftain among the living, and going back 3 generations among the dead? The forgotten text he used to map the ancient sacred sites of the Arrow Nomads to such a degree that Kelsang was surprised about a few of them. That's who he was when no one was looking. Someone who dedicated his whole being to his avatarhood. Yoon wanted to make up for the lost time he'd squandered by being discovered so late. He wanted to express gratitude for Jianzu and the entire world for giving him the greatest gift in existence. Taking it easy was the last thing on his mind. Oh, poor baby. Poor baby. I wonder when he's going to find out. Well, yeah, I wonder when he's going to find out. Poor thing. He's not even the Avatar, but he's learning like different styles from different nations, so that's a cool thing. But other than that, that sucks. Poor Yoon. She knows that, he thought. Heiran was purposely goading him by calling him lazy, but an uncontrollable fury rose in his stomach anyway. Yoon's fingers plowed into the smooth surface of the marble, crushing the stone into his fist as effortlessly as if it were chalk. He would never lash out against a teacher. The only way he could put up resistance against Heiran was to disappoint her, to uphold her accusation that he was a wayward child. His next punch produced a swirling. Okay, hold on. Okay, this is going to be very confusing. His next punch produced a swirling dragon's belch of flame worthy of the Fire Lord. Each spout and flicker rendered lovingly, mockingly in white stone dust. Never mind, I didn't read the whole thing. He let it rage and dance like a real fire reacting to the eddies of the breeze, and then let the cloud of particles fall to the ground. To cap it off, make the performance complete, he added the smirk that everyone always said reminded them of Karuk's. A clown needed his makeup, after all. Heiran stiffened. She looked like she was about to slap him across the face. The blast went nowhere near her, but it didn't exactly fly away from her either. In the old days, masters used to maim their students for insubordination, she said hoarsely. Yoon restrained himself from flinching. What wonderful modern times we live in. A single clap pierced the air. They both looked over to see Jianzu, watching from the sidelines. Yoon gritted his teeth hard enough to make them squeak. Normally, he could sense his mentor's footfalls through the ground and get his act together. But today was all kinds of off balance. Jianzu waved Yoon over like he hadn't caught the Avatar and his firebending master at each other's throats. Come, he said to his ward. Let's take a break. The training grounds had alcoves. Alcoves? I think that's alcoves. Alcove. Oh yeah, it is alcove.
Here's the definition of alcove. A recess in the wall of a room or garden.
No thanks. That's all I wanted. Was affirmation. The training grounds had alcoves in the walls for stashing weapons, water jugs, and hollow discs made of pressed clay powder that would explode harmlessly on impact. Enough supplies to train an army of benders. Jianzu and Yoon took their tea in the largest. Jianzu and Yoon took their tea in the largest of these storage areas, surrounded by straw target practice dummies. The floor was thick with dust. While Yoon poured, Jianzu plucked a twig that had snagged on a burlap sack and used it as a stylus, drawing a simplified version of a pie show board on the ground between them. Yoon was confused. The two of them had played the game incessantly while first getting to know each other, but Pie Show had been forbidden to him for a long time now. It was a distraction from mastering the elements. Jianzu contemplated the empty grid, his long face flickering in recollection of past sequences, lines of shining brilliance and outrageous risks unfolding in the tiles. The markers of age the markers of age radiated outward from his eyes. The troubles that gave him severe crow's feet and white temples had yet to reach the smooth, flat line of his mouth. I have some news, he said. Our emissaries tell us that Tagaka has agreed to sign a new version of her great-grandfather's treaty. Tagaka. I feel like I should know that name, because I forget. Tagaka. Hold on. Tagaka. I know I read it early on in the book. And I don't remember who Tagaka was. No, that's Kelsang. Who the fuck is Tagaka? Hold on, I need to know this now. Tagaka Avatar. Oh, she's a pirate queen. Pirate queen of the Southern Ocean. Yeah, I remember they were talking about her. Yeah, that's right, that's right. Yeah, yeah, I remember. Now I'm trying to look for it in the book. Well, why is she so important? Well, it just says here, I don't know if we'll get spoiled. Self-appointed Marquess of the Eastern Sea, Pirate Queen of the Southern Ocean, and Waterborne Guardian of the uh, Waterborne Guardian of the South Pole, was a pirate queen slaver and waterbender who led an ethnically mixed people of pirates known as the Nation that ravaged the Earth Kingdom's coast during the early life of Kyoshi. Oh, okay, okay. Alright, alright. There we go. Because I was just like, I should know that name from somewhere, but I don't remember it. I should really remember it. But yes, I have some news, he said. Our emissaries tell us that Tagaka has agreed to sign a new version of her great-grandfather's treaty. Yoon perked up. His master had been trying to pursue a diplomatic solution with the queen of the sea-born Dao Fei for years. What changed? What changed, Sifu? Jiansu gestured at him. You. She learned we finally found the Avatar and that he was one of the strongest benders of this generation. You knew that was true. For Earth, at least. It might have been arrogant for him to think so, but it was hard to argue with the evidence left across the ground. Oops. Yeah, oops. Yeah, and you knew that was true. For Earth, at least. It might have been arrogant for him to think so, but it was hard to argue with the evidence left across the ground. The Fifth Nation fleet will cease raiding the coastlines along the Shishan Mountains, Jianzu said. They've promised not to raise a sail under her colors within sight of the Eastern Air Temple. In exchange for what? For official access to the timber of Yeso Island, though they've been unofficially logging there for the better part of a decade. The other sages are calling it a total diplomatic victory. So much gained for so little. The leaves of Yoon's teas lost their grip on the surface of the liquid. Water was the last element he'd need to master. He'd always expected he'd have a better time of it than fire. Except it's not a victory, is it? He said, rolling the cup between his fingers. She's promising to halt her operations in one sector, but a fleet of marauders isn't going to lay down their arms and pick up the plow overnight. They'll cause trouble in the other oceans. Maybe go as far north as Chameleon Bay or the Fire Nation home islands. It's just pushing the violence from one corner of the world to the other. What would you do then? Jianzu said. Reject Tagaka's offer? Yoon took a turn staring at the blank game board, especially at the sections where players usually laid their boat tiles. He shuddered at the images that came rushing into his head. Hold on. Contrary to what many of the locals thought, Jianzu did not keep him locked up in the estate like a moonflower that would wither into too much sunlight. In between training, they regularly took trips around the world with Kelsey on his flying bison, Pang Pang, to meet important people from around the Four Nations. The goal was to make sure Yoon had a cosmopolitan upbringing, since the ideal avatar was also a diplomat, never showing bias to one people or the other. He learned a lot by their side, exploring great cities and talking with their leaders. Sometimes he had fun. The last outing was not one of those times. When Jianzu told him they were obligated to survey the extent of the damage inflicted by the largest coordinated pirate raid on the southeast coast of the Earth Kingdom mainlands in over a century, Yoon had steeled himself for blood. Corpses amid smoldering ruins, a scene of total devastation. But as they flew low over the shores of on Ping Ping's back, scanning the seaside villages for survivors, he was surprised to see the driftwood houses and straw huts intact, nearly pristine. No sign of the inhabitants anywhere. They had to touch down and investigate a few structures before things fell into place. Inside the homes, They'd found spears left on racks, tables set with cooked food that hadn't rotten yet, fishing nets in the midst of being repaired. There had been no massacre. By complete surprise, the villagers had been taken, like they were livestock, animals stolen from a herd. Nothing else had been touched by Tagaka's corsairs, except for a common thread of items that you noticed at the last minute. They'd stolen the bells, the drums, and the gongs. The watchtowers of any village lucky enough to have one were picked clean. Cast bronze was extremely valuable and nigh irreplaceable in that part of the country. Cast bronze was extremely valuable and nigh irreplaceable in that part of the country. Yoon realized. So were the right quality hides for drumskins. The pirates had made it so that the village warning systems couldn't be reused when they returned. Nearly 1,000 people were unaccounted for. Conducting a raid on this scale with such precision was not only a crime, but a message. Tagaka was more dangerous than her father, her grandfather, and every other crude, bloody-minded pirate that ran the Eastern Sea. Yoon had spent the better part of that night screaming and raging at Jianzu after his mentor calmly explained that the Earth King was likely not going to do anything to protect his subjects, not ones of so little marginal value, that they were largely on their own to deal with the problem. The emptiness of the Paisho board taunted Yoon as loudly as the missing unrung bells. Not if they returned, but when. He put his tea down and leaned back on his hands. We should take her offer and pretend we're glad to do it. It's our only chance of rescuing the surviving captives. It'll buy time for the coastal areas to build up defenses. And if Tagaka is bold enough to sail northwest, there's a chance she'll grow overconfident and pick a fight with the Fire Navy. That's an opponent ruthless enough to destroy her completely. His proposal spilled out of his lips naturally, despite the unease it created in his core. The idea of manipulating the nations he was supposed to keep in balance. The idea of manipulating the nations he was supposed to keep balance over was frightening, solely because of how easy and effective it would be. He waited for a rebuke. Instead, he caught Jianzu smiling at him openly, a rare occurrence. See? Jianzu said, gesturing at the game board out of habit. This is why you are destined to be a great avatar. You have the insight to think ahead, to see where people are weak and strong. You know which threads of the future to pull. There's not going to be a solution with the Fifth Nation through powerful bending, but there will be a strategy, a line of play that minimizes the suffering they can inflict, and you've spotted it. You're everything Karuk was not, Jianzu continued, and I couldn't be prouder. Oh shit, I feel like they don't even know that he's a fake avatar. I feel like they think he's the real avatar. It might be that when they picked Yoon, I think they still did the toy thing. And he picked all the ancient relics by dumb luck. But they kept Kyoshi. Maybe they have a feeling that or maybe they just wanted to get her off the streets. Yeah, oh my god. Those poor suckers. God, this book just keeps on getting interesting and interesting. God, can you imagine being wrong and training someone for so long and just they're not it? Oh my god. How can you fuck up that bad? Okay. You're everything Karuk was not, Jianzu continued, and I couldn't be prouder. That was meant to be a genuine compliment. Karuk had been the genius of the highest caliber when it came to Pai Sho, bending too, but according to Jianzu, who'd known him best, the water avatar had been unable to translate his personal talents into effective leadership on the world stage. He'd squandered this time, pursuing pleasures around the four nations, and died early. Oh, yeah, that would be devastating. So I guess that means I'll be unhappy and live forever, Yoon thought. Wonderful. He looked across the courtyard where Hei Ran had taken a post, waiting for them to finish. The woman was a statue. Every piece of grief he got from her was made worse by the fact that she resembled her daughter Rangi so closely. Every piece of grief he got from her was made worse by the fact that she resembled her daughter Rangi so closely, with the same porcelain doll face, pitch black hair, and eyes tending toward darker bronze than the usual Fire Nation gold. Having a beautiful, adoring bodyguard close to his own age like Rangi was ruined when her spitting image beat the snot out of him on a regular basis. Oh, fuck, dude. That sucks. That sucks major butt. Hei Ran thinks I'm a little too much like Karuk, Yoon said. She's too hot. I can't deal. Oh my god, I get it. Hot. Because she's Fire Nation. Okay, I'm gonna stop. Okay. Hei Ran thinks I'm a little too much like Karuk, Yoon said. You have to be more understanding with her, Jianzu said. She resigned her commission in the Fire Army to teach Karuk, and then she left the Royal Academy to teach you. She sacrificed more than any of us for the Avatar. Hearing that he'd ruined two different promising careers for the same woman who didn't make him feel any better. Yeah, hearing that he'd ruined two different promising careers for the same woman didn't make him feel any better. That's more reason for her to hate my guts. Jianzu got up and the motion for Yoon to do the same. No, her problem is that she loves you, he said. If that's true, then she has a funny way of showing it. Jianzu shrugged. Fire Nation mothers. She loves you almost as much as I do. Too much, perhaps. Yoon followed his mentor toward the center. Actually, hold on just 1 second. I need to go outside to do a thing real quick. I just needed to do with them. Okay. Another one. Okay, there we go. And I'm gonna drink some water. Okay, there we go. Alright. Jianzu shrugged. Fire Nation mothers. She loves you almost as much as I do. Too much, perhaps. Yun followed his mentor toward the center of the training floor. The transition from cool shade back to that outdoor heat was a harsh swipe. You must know that you have the love of many people, Jianzu said. Kel sang, the visiting sages, nearly everyone who's ever met you. It's my belief that the earth itself loves you. You feel connected to it at all times, like it's speaking to you. Am I right? He was, though Yoon didn't know where he was going with this. Feeling connected to the earth was the first, most basic requirement for earthbending. Hey Ran joined them in the court. On the other hand, firebending is unique among the 4 bending styles, in that it typically does not draw from a mass of elements separate from one's own body, Jianzu said. You don't form a bond with the element in your surroundings. Instead, you generate it from within. Am I explaining that correctly, headmistress? Heiran nodded, equally confused as to why they were discussing the obvious. Take off your shoes, Jianzu said to Yoon. Huh? Like many earthbenders, Yoon never wore shoes if he could help it. But for firebending training, they'd forced him into a pair of grippy slippers. Tagaka's conditions are that any new treaties must be signed on grounds of her choosing, Jianzu said. I know I said that diplomacy was more important than bending for this mission, but it would be much more ideal if you had some mastery over fire, in case the pirates need a little show of force. Take off your shoes. The sun beat down on Yoon's head. The buzz of insects grew louder in his ears, like an alarm. He had never disobeyed Jianzu before, so he yanked off the slippers, rolled down his socks, and threw them to the side. I don't understand, he said. What's happening here? Jianzu surveyed the featureless training floor. Like I said, the earth itself loves you, and you love it. The love, that bond, could be what's holding you back, blocking off the different states of mind necessary to master the different elements. We should try severing that link so that you have nothing to rely on but your inner fire. No outside help. For the first time in his life, Yoon saw Heiran hesitate. Jianzu, she said, are you sure that's a good idea? I'm taking away your earthbending. Yeah. Jianzu, she said. Are you sure that's a good idea? It's an idea, Jianzu said. Whether it's good or not depends on the result. An icy knot formed in Yoon's stomach as his mind made the connection. You're going to have her burn my feet? Jianzu shook his head. Nothing so crude. He put his hand out to the side, palm down, and then threw it upward. Around them, the marble floor sprouted out. Around them, the marble floor. She's gonna cut off your feet. Yeah, she's gonna cut off her feet. Oh my god. Okay. Around them, the marble floor sprouted 3-inch high pyramids, each ending in a sharp point. The grounds were all uniformly blanketed in them from wall to wall. It was as if someone had hammered nails into each space of a pie show board and then flipped it over, spikes up. Now, let's see you run through the first sun gathering form, Jianzu said. The garden of caltrops surrounded them in a tight ring. Get out there, right in the middle of it, and show us your stuff. Yoon blinked back tears. He looked at Heiran pleadingly. She shook her head and turned away. You can't be serious, she said. You can't be serious, he said. Jianzu, as calm as a drifting cloud. You may begin when ready, Avatar. And that is where the chapter ends. Yeah, this was not as long as the chapter as I thought it would be. But yeah. Yeah, damn, that's nuts. Okay. But we will go on to the next chapter. And the next chapter is called Honest Work. And I think this is a relatively short chapter. Yeah, relatively. Okay. Sorry, I was reading ahead. Okay. Yes, honest work. Stepping through the gate of the mansion was like entering a portal to the spirit world, or so Kyoshi imagined from hearing Kelsang stories. It was a complete transition from one set of rules to another, from a dull, mindless place where the only currencies you could spend there were sweat and time, sowing your seeds and baiting your hooks in the hope of staving off hunger for another season, to a mystical universe where rituals and negotiations could make you supreme in a single day. Their passage was marked by a cool blip of shade underneath the rammed earth wall. Yeah, yeah, their passage was marked by the cool blip of shade underneath the rammed earth wall. Ranky nodded at the two watchmen. Rangi nodded at the two watchmen, grizzled veterans of the Earth King's army, who stiffened their necks and bowed back to her in deference. Lured by... Hold on. Yeah, lured by... Alright, sorry about that. Lured by better pay into Jianzu's services, they kept their... Yeah, lured by better pay into Jianzu's services, they'd kept their dished wide-brimmed helmets, but painted over them like the sage's personal shades of green. Yeah, but painted them over with the sage's personal shades of green. Kyoshi always wondered whether that was against the law or not. Inside the vast garden hummed with conversation. Sages and dignitaries from far-off lands constantly flowed in and out of the estate, and many of them enjoyed conducting their business among the flowers and sweet-smelling fruit trees. An overdressed merchant from Amashu haggled with the Fire Nation procurement officer over cabbage futures, ignoring the cherry blossom petals falling into their tea. Two elegant northern water tribe women, arm in arm, meditatively walked a maze pattern raked into a field of pure white sand. In the corner, a morose young man with carefully disheveled hair bit the end of his brush, struggling with a poem. My cabbages! Man, they were talking about cabbages even before Aang. Cabbages must have been like that new shit that was just starting out. And now they have Cabbage Corp and Legend of Korra. I love how they still kept that going. My cabbages! Any one of them could have been, and probably were, benders of the highest order. It always gave Kyoshi a thrill to see so many masters of the elements gathered in one place. When the estate was full of visitors, like today, the air felt alive with power. Sometimes literally so when Kelsang was around and in a playful mood. My cabbage corp. Aunt Mui, the head of the kitchen staff, appeared. Aunt Mui, head of the kitchen staff, appeared from one of the side hallways and bounced over to them, looking like a plum rolling down a bumpy hill. She used her momentum to deliver a hard swat to the small of Kyoshi's back. Kyoshi yelped and gripped the jar tighter. Don't carry food around where the guests can see it, Auntie Mui hissed. Use the service entrance. She hustled Kyoshi down the steps of a tunnel. Oblivious to the hard lump Kyoshi's forehead took against the top support beam. Oh yeah, because she's tall as fuck. They shuffled down the corridor that... They shuffled down the corridor that still smelled of sawdust and wet loam through the plaster. It was more It was more obvious down here how new and hastily constructed the complex really was. The roughness of the hallway was another of the many little details that poked holes in the common illusion those under Jianzu's roof tried to uphold, from his most exalted guest down to his lowliest employee. The Avatar's presence was an uncomfortably recent blessing. Everyone was going through the motions at an accelerated pace. You were out in the sun too much, weren't you? Aunt Mui said. Your freckles got darker again. Your freckles got darker again. Why don't you ever wear that concealer I gave you? It has real crushed nacre in there. It has real crushed nacre in there. In it. Kyoshi's skull throbbed. What? What and what? And look like a bloody what? And look like a bloodless ghost? Better than looking like someone sprinkled star poppy seeds over your cheeks. About the only things Kyoshi hated more than the gunk on her skin were the warped, infuriating values that older folks like Aunt Mui held around complexion. It was yet another contradiction of the village that you should make an honest living toiling under the sun, but never in the slightest look like it. Kyoshi has freckles. Yes, Kyoshi has freckles. Okay. It is so cute. I don't think we ever see her without her makeup, which is pretty sad. We've only ever seen her with her makeup on. Man, I want a spin-off series about her. That'd be cool. Oh yeah, right? Seriously. And it was yet another contradiction of the village that you should make an honest living toiling under the sun, but never in the slightest look like it. In the game of rural Yokoyan beauty standards, Kyoshi had lost that particular round, among others. They climbed another set of stairs. Kyoshi remembering to duck this time and pass through a hall for drying and splitting the immense amount of firewood needed to fuel the stoves. Aunt Mui tisked at the splitting maw that had been buried in the chopping block by the last person to use it, instead of being hung up properly on the wall. But she wasn't strong enough to pull it out, and Kyoshi's hands were full. They entered the steamy, cavernous kitchen. The clash of metal pans and roaring flames could be mistaken for a siege operation. Kyoshi set the pickling jar down on the nearest table and took a needed stretch, her arms wobbling with unfamiliar freedom. The jar had been attached to her for so long that it felt like saying goodbye to a needy child. Don't forget, you have gift duties tonight. She was startled to hear, Don't forget, you have gift duties tonight. She was startled to hear Ranky's voice. She didn't think the firebender would have followed her this deep into the bowels of the house. Ranky glanced around. Don't waste too much time here. You're not a scholarly maid. The nearby kitchen staff, some of whom were scholarly maids, looked at them and scowled. Kyoshi winced. The villagers thought she was stuck up for living in the mansion. The other servants thought she was stuck up for her closeness to Yoon and Rangi, and with her elite attitude. with her elite attitude, only made it worse. There was no pleasing anyone. She thought as Rangi departed from the barracks. Yeah, she thought as Rangi departed from the barracks. Kyoshi spotted an odd figure among the legions of white-clad cooks, pounding away at their stations. An airbender, with his orange robes rolled up into his blocky shoulders. His massive paws were covered in flour, and he tucked his forest of a beard into his tunic to keep it from shedding. It was like the kitchen had been invaded by a mountain ogre. Kelsang should have been above ground, watching the Avatar, or at least greeting the sage, or at least visiting, or at least greeting a visiting sage, not cutting out dumpling wrappers among the cooks. He looked up and grinned when he saw Kyoshi. "I've been banished," he said, preempting her question. "Jianzu thinks my presence is causing Yoon to prematurely dream about airbending, so we're trying to keep him focused on one element at a time. I needed to feel useful, so here I am." Kyoshi sidled her way over to him through the crowded space and gave the monk a kiss on the cheek. "Let me help." She washed her hands in a nearby sink, grabbed a ball of dough to knead, and fell into work beside him. For the past decade, Kelsang had essentially raised her. He used what leeway he had from the Southern Air Temple to reside in Yokoya as much as he could, in order to look after Kyoshi. When he had to leave, he foisted her upon different families, begged alms to keep her fed. After Jianzu brought the Avatar to Yokoya for safekeeping, Kelsang twisted his old friend's arm to hire Kyoshi on. Fucking that's sweet. I love that. He's just temporarily... Yeah, but that's so sweet. That's like so kind. Oh, is my... Okay, it said it looked like my voice was out, like, red. Okay, yeah, it seems like... I mean, he is in aerial mode. Also, can you hear me alright? Because my voice connected thing is going from red to yellow. Okay, now it's back to green. Oh, cool. I just saw it now when I was looking at the comments. That it was like red. I was just like, oh no. But cool, you can hear me. Alright. Yeah, after Jianzu brought the Avatar to Yokoya for safekeeping, Kelsang twisted his old friend's arm to hire Kyoshi on. He'd done all this, saved the life of a child stranger, for no reason other than she needed someone. For no reason other than that she needed someone. In a part of the Earth Kingdom where love was reserved solely for blood relations, the monk from a foreign land was the dearest person in the world to Kyoshi, which is why she knew his good cheer right now was completely fake. Rumors flew around the house that the once legendary friendship between Avatar Karuk's companions had deteriorated, especially so between Jianzu and Kelsang. In the years since Karuk's death, if the gossip was to be believed, Jianzu had amassed wealth and influence unbecoming of a sage who was supposed to be dedicated solely to guiding Karuk's reincarnation. Bending masters came to the house to pay obeisance I'm gonna look that up. Obeisance. Obey. No, it's obeisance, which means deferential respect.
Obeisance.
Yeah, obeisance. Okay. Yeah. Bending masters came to the house to pay obeisance to him, not the Avatar and the decrees that were normally made by the Earth Kings. Instead bore Jianzu's seal. Kelsang disapproved of such. Kelsang disapproved of such power-hungry actions, and was at risk of being completely shunted to the side. Kyoshi didn't have context around the politics, but she did worry about the growing rift between the two master benders. It couldn't be good for the Avatar. Yoon adored Kelsang almost as much as she did, but ultimately was loyal to the Earth Sage who'd found him. Distracted by her thoughts, she didn't notice the little puff of flour fly up from the table and hit her in the forehead. Hold on. Yeah. Let me read that again. Okay. Actually, I'm going to do something real quick. There we go. Much better. Yeah, distracted by her thoughts, she didn't notice the little puff of flour fly up from the table and hit her head. Distracted by her thoughts, she didn't notice the little puff of flour fly up from the table and hit her in the forehead. White dust clouded her vision. She squinted at Kelsang, who wasn't trying to hide the second shot that spun around above his palm, chambered in a pocket-sized whirlwind he'd summoned. "It wasn't me," he said. "It was a different airbender." Kyoshi snickered and grabbed the flower bed out of the air. It burst between her fingers. "Quit it before Auntie Mui throws us out of here." Then quit looking troubled on my behalf," he said, having read her mind. "It's not so bad if I take a break from Avatar business. I'll get to spend more time with you. We should go on a vacation, the two of us, perhaps to see the air nomad's sacred sites." She would have liked that very much. Chances to share Kelsang's company had gotten rarer as the Avatar and his teachings sank deeper into the mesh of world affairs. But as lowly as her own job was in comparison, she still had the same responsibility to show up every day. "I can't," Kyoshi said. "I have work." There'd be enough time in the future for traveling with Kelsang. He rolled his eyes. "Bah, I've never seen someone so averse to fun since old Abbott. I've never seen someone so averse to fun since old Abbott no fruit pies doors." He flicked another blob of flour at her, and she failed to flinch out of the way. "I know how to have fun," Kyoshi whispered indignantly as she wiped her nose with the back of her wrist. From the head of the cutting board tables, Aunt Mui gave a tongue-curled whistle, interrupting their debate. "Poetry time," she said. Everyone groaned. She was always trying to enforce high culture on her workers, or at least her idea of it. "Lee!" she said, singing out. She said, slinging out an unfortunate walk worker, slinging out an unfortunate walk handler. You start us off. The poor line cook stumbled as he tried to compose on the spot while keeping count of his syllables. Uh, the web, the weather is nice. Sun shining down from the sky. Birds are singing. Good? Aunt Mui made a face like she'd swigged pure lemon juice. That was awful. Where's your sense of balance? Symmetry, contrast. Lee threw his hands in the air. He was paid to fry things, not perform in the upper ring of bossing say. Can someone give us a decent verse? Auntie Mui complained. There were no volunteers. I've got cheeks like ripe round fruit, Kalsang suddenly pitched forth. They shake like bows in the storm. I blush bright red when I see a bed, and leap at the sound of the horn. The room exploded in laughter. He picked a well-known shanty popular with sailors and field hands, where you improvised raunchy words from the perspective of your object of unrequited affection. It was a game for others to guess who you were singing about, and the rhythm made manual labor more pleasant. Brother Kelsing, Auntie Mui said, scandalized. Set an example. He had. The entire staff was already chopping, kneading, and scrubbing at the raucous tune. It was okay to misbehave if a monk did it first. What? I don't get it. I don't get your comment. Oh, yeah. Oh my god, yeah. I was not paying attention. I didn't. But I'm rereading again. Okay. I've got cheeks I got cheeks like ripe round fruit. They shake like bows in the storm. I blush bright red when I see a bed, and leap at the sound of a horn. Okay, yeah, I get it. I get it. It totally just went like over my head. It totally went over my head. I got the description of like what about like the sailors and everything, but I did not. It ran. It like hurtled above my head. Yeah, yeah, I did. I didn't realize. Damn. Oh, jeez. Yeah, he was. Oh, Jesus. Yeah, it totally flew over my head. Totally. Okay. I got it now. I still can't believe that went over my head, but it did. But it did. Unfortunately. Alright. The entire staff was already chopping, kneading, and scrubbing at the to the raucous tune. To the raucous tune. It was okay to misbehave if a monk did it first. I've got a nose like a dove-tailed deer. I run like a leaf on the wind, Lee sang, evidently better at this than haiku. My arms are slight and my waist is tight, and I don't have a thought for my kin. Mirai! Said a dishwasher yelled out. He's got it bad for the greengrocer's daughter. The staff whooped over Lee's protest. Yeah, he's got it bad for the greengrocer's daughter. The staff whooped over Lee's protests, thinking it was a good match. Sometimes it didn't matter to the audience if they guessed right or wrong. Kyoshi next, someone said. She's never here, so let's make the most of it. Kyoshi was caught off guard. Normally, she wasn't included in household antics. She caught Kelsing's eye and saw the challenge twinkling there. Fun, hey? Fun, huh? Prove it. Before she could stop herself, the rhythm launched her into song. Who you got a crush on? Okay. Yeah, before she could stop herself, the rhythm launched her into song. I've got 2 knives that are cast in bronze. They pierce all the way to the soul. They draw you in with the promise of sin, like the moth to the flame of the coal. The kitchen howled. Aunt Mui clucked in disapproval. Keep going, you naughty girl! Lee shouted, glad that the attention was off of him. She had even managed to throw off Kelsang. He looked at her curiously, as if he had a spark of recognition for whom she was describing. Kyoshi knew that wasn't possible when she was simply tossing out the first words that came to her head. She thumped a length of dough onto the table in front of her, creating her own percussion. I've got hair like the starless night. It sticks to my lips when I smile. I'll wind it with yours and we'll drift off course in a ship touching hearts all the while. Somehow, the improvisation was easy, though she'd never considered herself a poet, or a bawdy mind, for that matter. It was as if another person, someone much more at ease with her own desires, was feeding her the right lines to express herself. And to her surprise, she liked how the inelegant lines made her feel truthful and silly and raw. For the way I walk is a lantern lit that leads you into the night. I'll hold you close and love you the most until our end is in sight. Kyoshi didn't have time to ponder the darker turn her verse took before a sudden pain shot through her wrist. Kelsane had grabbed at her arm and was staring at her, eyes wild and white. His grip squeezed tighter and tighter, crushing her flesh, her nails drawn blood from both her skin and his. You're hurting me, she cried. She cried out. The room was silent, disbelieving. Kelsing let go, and she caught herself on the edge of the table. The map of purple was stamped onto her wrist. Kyoshi, Kelsang said, his voice constricted and airless. Kyoshi, where did you learn that song? And that is the end of that chapter. me see. No, not like Avatar white. Hold on. No, I feel like white as in he's like opening his eyes like super wide. So it's just like mostly the white of his eyes. I think that's what it was trying to say. Yeah. But yes, that is the end of the chapter. He jelly. Okay. I think I'm going to read another chapter. And I think that'll be it. Though, I really like this book already. And I want to keep on reading it. So maybe this will be the last chapter. Maybe this will be the second and last chapter. But yes, this one looks pretty short-ish. Like the same length as the last chapter. So, yeah. Okay. The next chapter is called Revelations. Oh shit, man. Oh shit. Okay. Yes, Revelations. After Kelsang took her aside into an empty study and spent half an hour tearfully apologizing for hurting her, he told her why he'd lost control. Oh, Kyoshi said in response to the worst news she'd ever heard her. Oh, Kyoshi said in response to the worst news she'd ever heard in her life. She ran her fingers through her hair and threw her head back. The library where they were hiding was taller than it was long. A mine shaft crammed with scrolls, yanked off the shelves and put back without care. Beams of sunlight revealed how much dust was floating around the room. She needed to clean this place up. You're mistaken, she said to Kelsang. Yoon is the Avatar. Jianzu identified him nearly 2 years ago. Everyone knows this. Kelsang didn't look any happier than she did. You don't understand. After Karuk died, the earthen traditions around locating the Avatar fell apart. Imagine if the seasons suddenly refused to turn. It was chaos. After so many failures, the sages, the earthbenders especially, felt abandoned by the spirits and their ancestors alike. Kyoshi leaned back against the ladder and gripped the rungs tightly. There was talk of Karuk being the last of the cycle, that the world was destined for an age of strife, to be torn apart by outlaws and warlords, until Jianzu labeled Yoon as the next Avatar. But the way it happened had no precedent. Tell me this. With the two of you as close as you are, has Yoon ever once told you the details? She shook her head. It was strange, now that Kelsang mentioned it. That's because Jianzu probably forbade him. The full story would cast the shadow of illegitimacy. Oh my god. I know how to say this word, but it's not happening. Illegitimacy. Okay, there we go. I just had to say the word and then the full story would cast the shadow of oh my god. Oh god. I hate it when that happens. I hate it. Illegitimacy. Okay. I don't know, the way it's like I see it and like how I hear it, it's like two completely like different words. I don't know how to explain it. The full story would cast the shadow of illegitimacy on him. The monk rubbed his eyes. It was abhorrently dusty in here. We were in Makapu. Wait, hold on. The boy in Makapu. Oh, the boy from Makapu. So it's just like, oh, he's probably from Makapu. That's why the first chapter we started off reading in this session was the boy from Makapu. Because the boy from Makapu was Yoon. Okay, makes sense now. Because I was just like, wait, that was the title of a chapter. But it had like no real meaning. But now it does. We were in Makapu, surveying the volcano. We had honestly given up on finding the Avatar, like so many others. On the last day of our trip, we noticed a crowd growing in a corner of the town square. They were gathered around a child with a pie show board, Yoon. He was hustling tourists like us, and he had made quite a bit of money at it too. To give his opponents confidence, he was running the blind bag gambit. It's when your opponent plays normally, picking their tiles, but you dump yours into a sack and mix them up randomly. Whenever you draw each whatever you draw each turn is what you have to play. An insurmountable disadvantage. Kyoshi could see it too easily. Yoon's silver tongue coaxing money out of people's wallets. A stream of banter and flashing smiles. He could probably bankrupt someone and still leave them happy to have met him. What most people don't know, what Yoon didn't know, was that the blind bag is supposed to be a scam. Kao Sang said. You're meant to rig the tiles, or the bag itself, so you have a way to find the exact combinations you need. But Yoon wasn't cheating. He was actually drawing randomly and winning. We might have passed it off as a kid enjoying a string of luck, but Jianzu noticed he was drawing and playing Karuk's favorite strategies, turn by turn, down to the exact placement of the exact tile. Game after game, he was doing this. He displayed tricks and traps that Karuk explicitly kept secret from anyone but us. Hold on, just 1 second. Yeah, he displayed tricks and traps that Karuk explicitly kept secret from anyone but us. It sounds like Karuk took Paisho pretty seriously, Kyoshi said. Kao Sang snorted and then sneezed, sending a little tornado spiraling toward the skylight. It was one of the few things he did, and he was unequivocally one of the greatest players in history. Depending on what rules you're using, you have as many as 60 tiles. There are over 200 spots on the board where you can put them. To randomly draw and then brilliantly execute a precise line of play that only Karuk was mad enough to win within the annals of the game. The odds of it are unfathomable. Kyoshi didn't have a taste for Paisho, but she knew that masters often talked about playstyles being an individualistic and recognizable as a but she knew that masters often talked about playstyles as being as individualistic and recognizable as a signature, an identity contained within the board. After what Jianzu went through with Xu Ping An and the Yellownecks, it was as if a mountain range had been lifted off his shoulders, Kao Sang said. Any doubts he might have had completely vanished when we saw Yoon earthbend. Granted, The kid can move rocks like no one else. If we identify the Avatar solely through the position bending contest, he'd be Karuk's reincarnation, hands down. Kyoshi thought back to this morning and Yoon's incredible manipulation of the earth. In her mind, only the Avatar could have done that. I don't get it, she said. All of this proof. Yoon is the Avatar. Why would you tell me that I'm... Why would you do that to me? Her anguish was absorbed, without an echo, by the masses of faded, crumbling paper that surrounded them. Can we get out of here? Kelsang said, his eyes red. They walked in silence down the corridors of the mansion. Kelsang's presence justified taking the shortest route, where the visiting dignitaries might see them. They passed works of calligraphy mounted on the walls that were more precious than bricks of gold. Vases of translucent delicacy held the day's flowers cut from the garden. Kyoshi felt like a thief as they passed the casually displayed treasures, no better than an intruder who might slip past the guards and stuff each priceless item into a gunny sack. Even the servants' dormitory, plain and poorly lit, seemed to whisper ingrate at her from its dark corners. Not all the staff were able to live on site, and she knew that a bed lifted off the floor and a wooden door that shut tight were better than what many other servants around the Earth Kingdom got. She and Kelsang squeezed inside her room. It was cramped, the two of them being the same height, but as sizable people, they had practice at minimizing themselves. Her quarters were small, but still technically more space than she needed. Besides a few knickknacks from her street life, her only two possessions upon moving into Jianzu's house were a heavy locked trunk that she stowed in the corner, and on top, the leather-bound journal that explained what was in it. Her inheritance from the days before Yokuya. You still have those, Kelsang said. I know how valuable they are to you. I remember tracking you down to the little nest you made around the trunk underneath the blacksmith's house. You hugged the book so tight to your chest and wouldn't let me read it. You looked ready to defend it to death. Her feelings about the items were more complicated than he understood. Kyoshi had never opened the lock, having thrown the key into the ocean one day in a fit of spite, and she'd nearly burned the journal several times over. Down the hall, someone was moving about, making the pine floorboard squeak. So they waited until the footsteps disappeared. Kelsang sat on the bed, bowing the planks in the middle. Kyoshi leaned against her door and braced her feet like an attacking army was trying to beat it down. Hold on. Okay. So you think I'm the Avatar because of a stupid song I made up, she said. Somewhere between the study and her room, she'd found enough backbone to say it out loud. I think you might be the Avatar, because you pulled from thin air the exact lines of a poem Karuk wrote a long time ago. Kelsang said. A poem. A poem wasn't proof. Not like the cold, hard impossibility of what Yoon did. Yeah, not like the cold, hard impossibility of what Yoon did. Kelsey could tell she needed a better explanation. What I'm about to tell you, you should keep to yourself, he said. I'm listening. It was about 20 years ago. Karuk's companions were very Karuk's companions were still very close, but without any real challenges. We drifted toward our separate lives. Jianzu started working on his family's holdings. He Ran started teaching at the Royal Fire Academy and married Ranki's father, Junsik, the same year. It was the happiest I had ever seen her. As for me, it was when Abat Dorj was alive, and I was still in his good graces. So I was being groomed to take over the southern. So I was being groomed to. So I was being groomed to take over the Southern Air Temple. Assigning a pass to the venerable benders was a strange mix of satisfying and unnervingly voyeuristic. She was spying on things she shouldn't. She was spying on things she shouldn't be privy to. What was Karuk doing? Being Karuk, traveling the world, breaking hearts and taking names. But one day he showed up on my doorstep out of the blue, trembling like a schoolboy. He wanted me to read over a declaration of eternal love he'd composed in a poem. Kelsang inhaled sharply through his nose. Kyoshi kept her room dust-free and spotless. This happened 2 months after Hei Ran's wedding, and 3 months before Jianzu's father got sick, he said. He used a formal meter than a sailor's ditty, and he didn't sing it, but its contents were exactly what you produced in the spur of the moment. That only weakened the argument. You seem to remember this in overly specific detail, Kyoshi said. The monk furrowed his brow. That's because he was going to give the poem to Hei Ran. Oh no. She'd heard stories of the water avatar's lack of propriety, but that was going several levels too far. What happened next? I meddled, Kelsang said. Kyoshi couldn't tell if he was regretful or proud of his decision. I berated Karuk for his stupidity and selfishness, for trying to ruin his friend's happy relationship, and made him destroy the confession while I watched. To this day, I don't know if I did the right thing. Hei Ran always did love Karuk with some piece of her heart. Maybe everything would have turned out better if they had run off with each other. Kyoshi quickly did the math in her head. And yes, if that had happened, Rangi wouldn't have been born. You did the right thing, she said, with more ferocity than she intended to show. I'll never find out. Not long after, Karuk met Umi. You did good! Worth! My GF was born. Also, if he would have married Hei Ran, maybe he would have lived longer and Kyoshi wouldn't be here right now. So that's another thing. Maybe the story's gonna get into it on how he died, but like, if that would have gone the way it did, yeah, her girlfriend wouldn't have been born, and maybe she wouldn't be the Avatar right now. Maybe she was still would have been born, but not been the Avatar. So that's another thing. And I'm just like, man, this book is so good. It's so good. I genuinely love this book. Oh my god. Yeah, he is too. And I'm just like, cool. Because, like, I want to know more about, like, all the other avatars and stuff. God, I just love it. Yeah, barely any Karuk or Yang Chen or anything like that. So this is so cool. And I can't wait to read the second Kyoshi book that they announced is being released late July. So I'm definitely gonna be reading this after this book, and I still have a whole lot. I'm only on page 52 out of 442. So I'm probably sure I'm gonna be reading this like into next month, because I'm not gonna be able to read all this like in 2 weeks or anything like that. This is gonna take me a while, and I'm glad for that, because I don't want to wait around if I finish this book early, which I'm pretty sure I'm not gonna do that. Okay. Back to the story. Okay. I'll never find out. Not long after, Karuk met Umi. And that tragedy unfolded so fast that my memory of it starts to blur. She didn't know who Umi was, and she had no intention of asking. Matters were complicated enough, and Kyoshi was no advanced student of Avatar lore, but she was developing a pretty dim view of the man. I wish I could be more certain, Kelsing said. But if there's anything the last 2 decades have taught me, it's that life does not work out in certain guaranteed ways. I'm not supposed to talk about this, but Yoon is having problems firebending. I fear Jianzu is becoming more extreme. He stakes so much on creating his ideal replacement for Karuk that anytime he faces a setback, his response is to dig in and push harder. Kyoshi was more shaken by the revelation that Yoon couldn't firebend than anything else she had heard so far. The image he projected was of a boy who could do the impossible. Yes, Yoon was her friend, but she still had the same faith in the Avatar as anyone else. Mastering fire would have been easy for someone as clever and talented as he was. Kelsing seemed to pick up on her fear. Kyoshi, Yoon still has the strongest case for being the Avatar. That hasn't changed. He worried the end of his beard. But if the criteria we've lowered ourselves to but if the criteria we've lowered ourselves to are improbable things that Karuk once did, then we have to consider you as well. The monk ruminated for a moment, fitting pieces together in his head. To be honest, though, I don't know if I'm entirely upset by this new complication. You have Avatar-worthy merits, that you won't acknowledge. Kyoshi scoffed. Such as? He thought it over more before deciding on one. Selfless humiliated. Selfless humiliated. You're tall as fuck. You're tall as fuck. Criteria number 1. Criteria number 2. Strong as fuck. Hot as fuck. Okay. But yes, back to the story. He thought it over before deciding on one. Scientifically proven to be the... Nice. He thought it over more before deciding on one. Selfless humiliate. I want to say humiliation. Humiliate. Humility. Some words are just fucking me up today. I don't know what it is. Hold on just 1 second. I need to do something real quick. Jesus, I'm just going over like the Go chat and Jesus. Oh, the Go chat is just a messenger group chat. They talk too much. But that's okay. Good thing I muted it, like, a long time before. Okay, sorry about that. Alright, back to where we were. He thought it over more before deciding on one. Uh, yeah, so did I. And I was just like curious, like how many messages were left. And it was just like 19 messages since you muted it. I'm just like, oh my god. I mean, 19's not a lot, but like sometimes they be talking. Oh, Jesus. Oh, maybe it was 58 for me too. I don't know. Something like that. I just remember it being long chat about something dumb that they would talk about. But yes. Alright, back to the thing. He thought it over more before deciding on one. Selfless why humility. For some reason it doesn't want to do, my brain doesn't want to process reading the litty part or the itty part because it doesn't. Selfless humiliate humility. Okay, that's where it's fucking me up, and I don't know why it's fucking me up because I'm reading it and I know what it says, but it's still fucking with me. Okay, I'm sorry to all the people that are gonna be listening to this, if any. I apologize. Selfless humility. Selfless humility. Why the fuck? I am actually getting really annoyed because it's just like, why do I want to say humiliate? Like, my brain automatically wants to go to humiliate for whatever reason. Like, there's no A in the word. Humility. And I say it right, but when it comes down to it, it's just like, nope, you're gonna say it wrong again. Yes, I know, but I'm still really annoyed. Yeah. Yeah, I think I want to say humiliate instead of humiliate. See, there we go. I'm doing it again. Humility. I have humility. I'm gonna lose my shit if I can't say this fucking word right. Humility. Okay, I think I got it. If I don't, I'm gonna... I don't know what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna try and read it over and over and over again until I get it right. That's what I'm gonna do. Okay. He thought it over more before deciding on one. Selfless humility. Selfless humility. Oh my god. Selfless humility. Selfless humility. There we go. And now I just need to say it one more time because I want to say it one more time because my brain won't be happy. Okay, if I just start from selfless humility. Alright, I'm going to start from a little before that, and then I hope that I will just say it instead of anticipating it very soon. Alright. The monk ruminated for a moment, fitting pieces together in his head. To be honest, though, I don't know if I'm entirely upset by this new complication. You have Avatar-worthy merits that you won't acknowledge. Kyoshi scoffed. Such as? He thought it over more before deciding on one. Selfless humility. Selfless humility. That's not true. I'm not anymore. She caught Kelsang about to laugh at her and scowled. He got up and her bedboards groaned with relief. I'm sorry, he said. I might have been able to answer this question years ago, had I the chance to meet your parents like I did with the other village children. More information could have made the difference. Kyoshi scrunched her face and kicked her heel back against the trunk, releasing the sudden burst of anger and that ran through her. The wooden side made a drum-like thud. I'm sure they would have loved having a child as valuable as the Avatar, she snapped. A once-in-a-generation prize. Kelsang smiled gently at her. They would have been proud of their daughter no matter what, he said. I know I am. Normally, Kyoshi would have felt comforted by the acknowledgement that she'd become such a fixture in Kelsang's life as he had in hers. But if he walked out her door and told Jianzu what happened, it could tear apart the little corner of the world the two of them had marked off for themselves. Didn't Kelsang see that? Wasn't he worried? Can we keep this a secret? Kyoshi said. Just for a while until I get my bearings. I don't want to be rash. Maybe you'll remember Karuk's poem differently in the morning, or Yoon will firebend. Anything. Ugh, fucking gross. Fucking car. I hate cars that sound like, I don't know, just gross. Kelsang didn't answer. He'd been suddenly transfixed by her tiny shelf. It held a gold-dyed tassel, a few beads, a coin she'd pilfered from a Shine donation box, and felt too guilty to spend and too afraid to return. The clay turtle she couldn't remember exactly how she'd gotten, other than that it was a present from him. He stared at the junk for a long time. Please, Kyoshi said. Kelsang looked back at her and sighed. For a little while, perhaps, he said. But eventually, we have to tell Jianzu and the others. Whatever the truth is, we must find it together. After he left, Kyoshi didn't sit down. She thought best on her feet, motionless. Her wooden cell of a room was good enough for that. This was a nightmare. While she wasn't an important political dignitary, she wasn't an idiot either. She knew what kind of bedlam lay behind the precarious violence Jianzu and Yoon had set up, the mountain they'd suspended in the air. From From around corners, she'd spied on the bouts of ecstatic sobbing, the sense of utter relief that many of the visiting sages went through when they first laid eyes on Yoon. After more than a decade of doubt, he was a solid body, a sharp mind, a belated fulfilled promise. The interior of the interior, yeah, not the interior, the inheritor of blessed Yang Chen's legacy. Avatar Yoon was a beacon of light who gave people confidence the world could have. Avatar Yoon, yeah, Avatar Yoon was a beacon of light who gave people confidence the world could be saved. Avatar Kyoshi would simply be dirt kicked over the fire. Her eyes landed on the journal lying on the trunk. Her pulse quickened again. Would they have left her behind if they knew there was a Would they have left her behind if they knew there was a chance, no matter how slim, that she held some worth? A knock came from outside. Gifting duty. She'd forgotten. She shoved the entire conversation with Kelsing to the back of her mind as she opened the door. She knew from experience there was no trouble so great that she couldn't pack it away. Kelsing wasn't certain. Therefore she didn't have to worry. What she needed to worry about was Rangi having her hide for. "Hey," Yoon said. "I was looking for you." And that is the end of that chapter. I think, because I'm very pumped, and this is a pretty short chapter, I'm gonna read this chapter. Let's see if this is the Avatar. The chapter after this one isn't so short. So yes, this will be the last chapter I will be reading. But first, I need to put on some socks because my feet are cold. But fuck, dude, I really love this story. And I love these socks. Okay. Yeah, I think I could still. Fuck. Okay. It's okay. Alright. On to the next chapter. Hold on just a second. Okay. Yes, on to the next chapter. The next chapter is called Promises. "You know, this is much harder when you're around," Kyoshi said to the Avatar. She and Yoon sat on the floor in one of the innumerable receiving rooms. The freestanding screen paintings had been folded up and pushed to the walls, and the potted plants had been set outside to make room for the giant piles of gifts that guests had brought for the Avatar. Damn, he received gifts like on the reg. Yeah. The freestanding screen paintings have been folded up and pushed to the walls, and the potted plants had been set outside to make room for the giant piles of gifts that guests had brought for the Avatar. Yeah, they all belong to Kyoshi. Yoon lay on his back, taking up valuable free space. He lazily waved a custom Ford filigreed Gion blade around in the air, stirring an imaginary upside-down pot with it. I have no idea how to use this, he said. I hate swords. A boy who doesn't like swords? Kyoshi said with a mock grasp. Put it in the armory pile, and we'll get Rangi to teach you at some point. There were a lot of guesses around the village about what exactly Kyoshi did in the mansion. Given her orphaned, unwanted status, the farmer's children assumed she handled the dirtiest, most impure jobs, dealing with refuge and carcasses and the like. The truth was somewhat different. Sound like a cook. I keep talking like that. You know who says that? Not the Avatar. Loser. The truth was somewhat different. What she really did, as her primary role, was pick after Yoon, tidy his messes. The Avatar was such a slob that he needed a full-time servant following in his wake, or else the chaos would overwhelm the entire complex. Soon after taking her on, the senior staff discovered Kyoshi's strong, compulsive need to put things back in their rightful place, minimize clutter, and maintain order. So they put her on Avatar containment duty. This time, the pile they sat hip deep in was not Yoon's fault. Wealthy visitors were constantly showering him with gifts in hope of currying flavor, or simply because they loved him. As big as the house was, there wasn't enough room to give each item a display place of honor. On a regular basis, Kyoshi had to sort and pack away the heirlooms and antiques and works of art that only seemed to get more lavish and numerous over time. Oh, look, she said, holding up a lacquered circle set in a crisscross pattern with luminous gems. Another Paisho board. Yoon glanced over. That one's pretty. This is, without exaggeration, the 44th board you own now. You're not keeping it. Ugh, ruthless. She ignored him. He might be the Avatar, but when it came to her officially assigned duties, she reigned above him. And Kyoshi needed this right now. She needed this normalcy to bury what Kelsang told her. Despite her best efforts, it kept rising from below. The notion that she was betraying Yoon and swallowing up what belonged to him. As he lounged on his elbows, Kyoshi noticed Yoon wasn't wearing his embroidered indoor slippers. Are those new boots? She said, pointing at his feet. The leather they were crafted from was a beautiful, soft gray tone with fur trim, like powdery white. The leather they were crafted from was a beautiful, soft gray tone with fur brim, like powdered morning snow. Probably baby turtle seal hide, she thought, with revulsion. Yoon tensed up. I found them in the pile earlier. They don't fit you. Give them over. I'd rather not. He scooched backward, but was hedged in by more boxes. She crawled over to peer at the boots from a closer angle. Did you stuff the extra space with bandages? They are ridiculously too big for you. Take them off. She got to her knees and grabbed his foot with both hands. Kyoshi, please! She paused and looked up at his face. It was filled with pure dread, and he rarely ever raised his voice at her. It was the second time today a person important to her had acted strangely. She forced herself to acknowledge the two incidents. Weren't related. So he'd suddenly developed an intense taste for footwear. She'd make a note of it. Yoon sat up and put his hands on Kyoshi's shoulders, fixing her with his jade green eyes. She'd long since become injured. No, not injured. She'd long since become inured to his flirty smiles whenever he wanted a rise out of her, his puppy dog pout when he wanted a favor, but his expression of earnest desire was a weapon he didn't pull out often. The way his troubled thoughts softened the sharp edges of his face was heart-piercing. Spell it, she said. What's bothering you? I want you to come on a journey with me, he said quietly. I need you by my side. Kyoshi nearly choked on her surprise. He was offering a taste of the world that only an exalted few got to sample. To be a companion to the Avatar, even for a moment, was an honor beyond reckoning. Flying into the sunset, huddled close to Yoon, the wind in their hair. If Aum and the other villagers were jealous of her before, they'd go foaming mad with envy now. What kind of trip is this? She said, unconsciously lowering herself to his volume. Where is this taking place? The Eastern Sea, near the South Pole, he said. I'm signing a new treaty with Tagaka. Well, so much for fantasy. Okay. Well, so much for fantasy. Kyoshi knocked Yoon's hands off her shoulders and sat back on her knees properly. The motion felt like it helped drain the heat out of her face. The Fifth Nation? She said. You're going to sit at a table with the Fifth Nation? And you want me to come with you? What was she going to do surrounded by a band of bloodthirsty pirates that was bigger than most Earth Kingdom provincial militias? Sweep up their cutlasses? I know how much you hate outlaws, Yoon said. I thought you might appreciate seeing a victory over them close. I thought you might appreciate seeing a victory over them up close. It's only political, but still. Kyoshi puffed her cheeks with frustration. Yoon, I am basically your nanny, she said. You need Rangi for this mission. Better yet, you need the Fire Lord's entire personal legion. Rangi's coming, but I want you as well. You won't be there to fight if things go wrong. He stared at his own feet. You'll just stand around and watch me as things go right. For the love of... Why? Perspective, he said. I need your perspective. He pulled out a Paisho tile he nicked from the set she'd pulled away and squinted at it like a jeweler in the light. Is it sad that I want a regular person there? He said. Someone who'll be scared and impressed and overwhelmed just like me, and not another professional avatar monitor. That after that afterward, I want you to tell me I'm as that afterward. I wanted you that afterward. I want you to tell me I'm as good as Yang Chen or Salai, regardless of whether or not it's true. He laughed bitterly. I know it sounds stupid, but I think I need the presence of someone who cares about me first and history second. I want you to be proud of me. I want you to be proud of me. Yoon, not satisfied with the performance of the Avatar. Yeah, it sounds like a bit of a jerk thing to say. I need someone little like you so that when they see me doing something big, they think I'm cool and that restores my. Yeah, please be impressed with me. You're so boring, so you'll be impressed. Yeah, basically, that's what he's saying. Okay. He laughed bitterly. I know it sounds stupid, but I think I need the presence of someone who cares about me first and history second. I want you to be proud of me, Yoon, not satisfied with the performance of the Avatar. Kyoshi didn't know what to do. This idea sounded mind-numbingly dangerous. She wasn't equipped to follow the Avatar into politics or battle, not like the great companions of past generations. Her stomach wound into a knot as she thought of the secret between her and Kelsey. They wouldn't get the time they needed to figure the matter out. The world demanded an Avatar or else. It'll be safer than it sounds, Yoon said. Oddly enough, most Daofei gangs hold quite a bit of respect for the Avatar. Either they're superstitious Either they're superstitious about the Avatar's spiritual powers, or intimidated by someone who can drop all four elements on their heads at once. He tried to sound lighthearted, but he looked more and more pained and he tried to sound lighthearted, but he looked more and more pained the longer she kept him waiting in silence. Then again, was it so dire of a choice? Jianzi would never risk Yoon's life, and she had a hard time believing Yoon would risk hers. Really, the situation wasn't as grand or complicated as she made it out to be. Avatar business and the fate of the Earth Kingdom was for other people and other times. Right now, Kyoshi's friends were depending on her. She'd be there for him. I'll come, she said. Someone has to clean up whatever mess you make. Yoon shuddered with relief. He caught her fingers and brought them gently to his cheek, nuzzling into them as if they were ice for a fever. Thank you, he said. Kyoshi flushed all the way down to her toes. She reminded herself that this casual tendency to be close to her, to share touches, was just part of his personality. She'd caught glimpses and heard stories from the staff that confirmed it. One time he'd kissed the hand of the Princess of Amashu for a second longer than normal, and scored an entire new trade agreement as a result. It had taken her a very, very long time after starting at the house to convince herself she was not in love with you. That yeah, it had taken her a very, very long time after starting at the house to convince herself she was not in love with Yoon. Moments like this threatened to undo all of her hard work. She let herself plunge under the surface and enjoy being washed over by the simple contact. Yoon reluctantly put her hand down. 3, he said, cocking his ear at the ceramic tiled floor with a smile. 2, 1. Rangi slid the door open with a sharp click. Avatar! Avatar? She bowed deeply and solemnly to Yoon. Then she turned to Kyoshi. You've barely made any progress. Look at this mess. We were waiting for you, Yoon said. We decided to burn everything. You can start with those hideous silk robes in the corner. As your avatar, I command you to light them up, right now. Ranki rolled her eyes. Yes, and set the entire mansion on fire. She always tried as hard as she could to remain dignified in front of Yoon, but she cracked on occasion. And it was usually during the times when the three of them, the youngest people in the complex, were alone together. Exactly, Yoon said cheerily. Burn it all to the ground. Reduce it back to nature. We'll achieve pure states of mind. You would start whining the moment you had to bathe with cold water, Kyoshi said to him. There's a solution for that, Yoon said. Everyone would go to the river, strip down naked, grab the nearest firebender, and pfaff! A decorative pillow hit him in the face. Kyoshi's eyes went wide in disbelief. Grangi looked utterly horrified at what she'd done. She'd attacked the Avatar. She stared at her hands like they were covered in blood. A traitor's eternal punishment awaited her in the afterlife. Yoon burst out into laughter. Kyoshi followed, her sides shaking until they hurt. Rangi tried not to succumb, clamping her hand over her mouth, but despite her best efforts, little giggles and snorts leaked through her fingers. An older member of the staff walked past, frowning at the trio through the open door, which set them off further. Kyoshi looked at Yoon and Rangi's beautiful, unguarded faces, freed from the weight of their duties, as if for a moment. Her friends. She thought of how unlikely it was that she'd found them. This is what I need to protect. Yoon defended the world, and Rangi defended him. But as far as Kyoshi was concerned, her own sacred ground was marked by the limits where her friends stood. This is what I need to keep safe above all else. The sudden clarity of her realization caused her mirth to evaporate. She maintained a rictus grin so the others wouldn't notice her change in mood. Her fist tightened around nothing. And the spirits help anyone who would take this from me. Yeah, and the spirits help anyone who would take this from me. And that is the end of that chapter. Cool. Thank you so much for listening. Hell yeah. That was great. That was some great reading right there. I got a lot done. I got a lot of pages in, which I'm glad. Okay, so thank you so much. Bye-bye.